Open again, they will tell you on the Joy Rodu Facebook page. Until then, in Ganawage.
Good evening and welcome to the third edition of the Grand Debate on K1037 Ganawage in collaboration with our partners at the Eastern Door and Ioriwa. I'm Paul Grafe. I'll once again be your moderator for the evening. Now, you can listen here, K1037.7 FM, K1037.com as well, streaming video on YouTube, live at K1037 Ganawage. It's also pinned on our Facebook page, but we can't run it live there because of the rules. We have three candidates with us in studio in alphabetical order: Cody Daibo, Gina Deer, and Gasanahawe Sky Deer. Each candidate will be afforded 2 minutes right off the top to introduce themselves. After that, we'll go into more of a free-for-all debate than we've had in the past. We have some questions prepared for the candidates. We will attempt to be fair in doling out equal airtime for each. However, that is not a guarantee. We'll also take questions from you, the listening audience. The way to do that: call 450-638-1313. Please keep the questions short and to the point. We can also make no guarantees that we'll get them on the air. The vetting of the questions left up to the heads of the two newspapers, who will send them to me. They're with us in the building. That is Steve Bonspiel and Greg Horn. We have a minimum 90 minutes planned, up to a maximum of 2 hours tonight. At the end of the debate, each candidate will be afforded 90 seconds to wrap things up. This all sounds like the rules right before radio bingo. I realize that. So let's right away get to the grand debate. We chose names out of a hat earlier, and the order to speak, and we haven't even told them: Gasanahawe Sky Deer first, Cody Daibo second, Gina Deer is third. Gasanahawe, 2 minutes is yours now.
All right, what's going to Ganawage Rono? Gasanahawe Sky Deer Yujats, Wagatuhuni, Niwagita Roda, Gayeri Niwasa Gayeri, not the Wagoseriago, Ona Whisk Yawarde. Nio Serage, zi wajot de ne giga zia zahayan dakwa. Wagadiandre ne gariwes, nekzi ezo genues, zi wajot de ne Ganawage orderiwage. So I'm Gasanahawe Sky Deer, Wolf Clan. Been at the council now for 15 years, serving as the current Grand Chief. My parents are Joanne Gasanahawe Sky, and my father is Kevin Ganasohu Deer. And I'm running again for the position of Grand Chief because I feel that, this community is at a crossroads. There's a lot that's coming at us right now. We definitely need strong leadership. I've been in the role for the last 3 years. I learned a lot, not only about the position, but about myself as a leader. And obviously there have been some strides that have made, but there's more that can be done. I think we're just at the tip of the iceberg. I think this current council has done a lot. But again, there's definitely more to be done, but we can't do it alone. And I think that's the message right now, that this community, we have so much strength. There's so many things that we could do if we collectively put our minds together. And I want to be that leader that helps you and helps us on this good path of where we need to go, not only for our jurisdiction, for our rights, but for our youth, our future generations, our language and culture, everything that makes us who we are as distinct people, as Ganyak Gahaga, Gahnawage Hirono. Tony Wanage.
Okay, your time is up. Now we'll go to you. Next up is Cody Daibo. Cody, your 2 minutes begins now.
Sego Ganawage, Cody Daibo Ujats. So I am 34 years old. I've been on council since 2019. I got in a by-election. And right from day one, I hit the ground running. I had taken on a lot of tough files in Ganawage. I always took the approach that leadership needs to be present in the community to handle and face these issues. Right now, Ganawage is facing a lot of issues, not only externally, but internally as well. We can do so much more as a community. Our financial position is getting stronger every year. We're getting more opportunities, but we need to start leveraging that and doing things internally. And it's always important to save for a rainy day, but at the same time, we also need to start building up the capacity internally in Ganawage. You know, our business communities are limited because we can't get infrastructure out, water infrastructure, paved roads, anything to our extremities. We have the Highway 30 lands. We need to start exploiting those lands as well, opening them up, not waiting for MTQ or Quebec to come in and build the infrastructure. We can do it on our own. We have the expertise, and we just need to rely on ourselves. Externally, even in a liberal government, we lost footing in online gaming. And that's a liberal government, which, all points are pointing towards a conservative government in maybe 2025. We need strong leadership who's going to be able to face the conservative government, which is not going to be like the liberal, and we've had trouble dealing with them as well. And I just fear, since I've been on council, you learn a lot. My previous career as a police officer, you grow up fast. You see what needs to be done. You see the problems in the community and how you have to face them head on and be with the community face to face. And I'll say, unfortunately, this event, I think it should have been live as well in front of the community, not just on the radio.
Well, that's something that we can think about for next time, 3 years from now. And finally, it is the turn of Gina Deer, who is running for Grand Chief once again. Gina.
Sego, Zebuguego, Ganawagadono, Ganyatahawi, Yojats. People know me. I've been on council. Previously, it was 9 years, 3 terms. I worked a lot of different files throughout those years. I've actually touched on almost every file there is within the organization. And I decided to come back because of the dissatisfaction I have with the current term that's wrapping up. There were 2 by-elections which I did not participate. A lot of people expected me to run, and they're all like, oh yeah, Gina Deer's running. And I said, oh, okay, well, I'm not sure who said that, but I was not running. I have a private life that I had resumed, and I was okay with the decision of the community when they had their last vote. But throughout this term, I've seen a lot of disconnect with community. And I think we need to get back to that. A lot of the work that I had done was to generate revenue in order to have those revenues go back to the people within the community. The everyday person is suffering and has needs, and we're not meeting those needs. We have a bureaucracy that has been built, and these people cannot get services, whether it be through housing, education, medicine. It doesn't matter. There is so much bureaucracy that is happening, and within the organization there are so many people that have left. There's such a turnover, there's no succession planning, and it leaves us unstable. So at this time, because of the leadership qualities that I have and the experience that I have, not only within council but as a business person, a political person, I am putting my hat back in the ring and stepping forward again.
Okay, that is just shy of your 2 minutes. Each candidate has now introduced themselves, Gasanahawe, Cody, and Gina, and we appreciate that. Again, we are taking questions. Please call 450-638-1313, and we hope to get them on the air for you. All right, let's get right off to the issue of transparency, and this has been something that people in the community have talked a lot about, that they're not hearing enough from the council, or if they are, it's being whitewashed and being sent out much, much later than previously, when this is something that was talked about prior to the last election and even the one before that. And it's not really going the way that people want it to. So let's talk a little about transparency. Gina, first off, you applied for a cannabis license.
No, I haven't.
You did not apply for...
No, I haven't. I have a business outside the community.
Mm-hmm.
I do not do business in the community. I have an SAQ permit, which is an alcohol permit to sell alcohol products from the local SAQ. And you cannot obtain both permits. You're not allowed to have two. So I would have to give up the SAQ permit that I currently have in order to try and apply for something that I'm not interested in.
Okay, so that's now on the record, not interested. All right, Cody, the big one is the Dean Montour.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that I realize, and people do realize, that each one of you, when you sit down at the table, have to sign a confidentiality agreement the second that you begin. And this lawsuit has now been launched against you and against the council.
Mm-hmm.
What can you tell the community without opening yourself up to more of a lawsuit?
As I stated in the early part, when somehow this came to light, I can't comment too much. Again, I am personally named in it. At the end of the day, I've done my job as an elected representative of this community, and I will continue to do my job. And that means asking any question, in order to come to a decision. At the end of the day, I'm not going to sit there and not say anything in terms of if it's going to ruffle feathers or anything like that. So I'm going to ask whatever question I need to make an informed decision.
Well, how does it affect your ability to do your job at the moment?
Well, I mean, again, it's a process. I think that's going to be coming out. The situation is moving through the courts right now. So hopefully we'll be able to talk a little bit more about it at another point. I mean, it is disappointing that we're at the position that we're in. You feel you can ask certain things or discuss things, amongst your colleagues. So, it's still not going to deter me from doing my job. I'm still going to show up every day and ask questions I need to ask.
Well, Gina, we were going to jump in here because we are making this a free-form debate. So I want the candidates to be able to jump in a lot more this time around than we did, when we did this 3 years ago. And Gus and yourself have the experience of a previous grand debate. Cody does not. So you had something you wanted to throw in here.
Yes, I mean, Cody, you said that you had asked questions and that was based on questions, but what this lawsuit was based on was actual statements that you made. And I had cautioned you in past meetings about statements you made that, you were riding the line. And again, there was an apology that was asked for. There was nothing but an apology and a retraction of the statement you made. Isn't that how this started, the first letter that you received?
So we can talk about things from the past if you want. And again, I would love to explain to the community the process and the train of thought that I've had, because, a lot of times things are done at the MCK, that maybe need to be questioned, from previous councils up until new councils. And when a new council does get in on July 6th, they're going to see and hear about decisions that were made in the past as well, and are probably going to ask the similar questions or different questions. So you may say I'm skating a line. For me, I'm representing the community, and I'm going to ask the community or ask the questions that I need to come to an actual decision on, and not just because somebody said so.
But it wasn't questions that you were asking at the time. That's what I'm saying. And because this got back to the individual, you were asked to retract and make an apology. And this would have actually avoided all of this legal battle because it was you that was the one it was directed at, and council decided to get involved and supported you on the legal front because there were issues about breaches of confidentiality. And is that not why the council in turn decided that they were going to support you, because there were 3 breaches from 3 chiefs at the table?
So I don't know what was said about me, afterwards. I know what I said, and I wasn't making any type of statements against any individuals. I was simply asking questions. So unfortunately, we can't get into too much details because it's in the courts right now, but I can't comment as to what was said outside of meetings. I can only say what I had brought up, and there was nothing personal about it. It was simply questions.
Well, I'm looking at a court case that's costing a lot of time and money for the community.
I agree.
Because we have lawyers that are working within MCK, and those lawyers are not even handling this case. We had to hire outside lawyers, so we're paying more fees now.
I agree.
And we have a process within our community, and that's the SCANA process. It's a dispute resolution. Has that ever been considered in order to avoid all this? Because we're all from the same community, and this was a mere statement that was asked to be retracted and an apology. And I'll go back to, the previous disciplinary measures just before an election, and that was for myself and the late Christine Zachary Diome. We put it out there. Nobody hid the fact that there was a disciplinary measures, and I was totally cleared in a report, but the council at that time decided to pass an act of censure against me, and in that act of censure I was asked to apologize, which, Gus, you were on council at the time, and I freely apologized, because if I'm going to say something that offends a community member, I have a responsibility to my community, and I have a responsibility to my council to avoid these sort of things. And in this situation, I think you had 2 opportunities in order, to avoid courts, and one was to use a process that we have in place with our justice system, or to simply apologize and retract. And maybe there was a misunderstanding because 3 chiefs said you made a defamation.
And I can't talk about what was said about me. And like I said, to this day, I said nothing defamatory, and I was simply asking questions. So however that was interpreted and then reported back outside, I have no control over what people say. So I only have control over what I say. And to this day, I was asking questions, and there was nothing defamatory about the questions.
But in order to avoid all this, don't you feel it would have been so much easier to just apologize and to just let the community know? Because there was a precedent right before election, like I said, with Christine and myself, to have the community know what was going on, and it wasn't hidden. There was no client attorney privileged anything. It was out there. And gladly, like I said, cleared in a report. I did no wrong, but I gladly apologize to keep the peace in the community.
Okay, but if you're not going to do something wrong, then why are you going to apologize for something? And then people have any right they want to take any type of legal action based on what they say. That's what the whole process is for. I'm not going to apologize for something that I did not do anything wrong on. So if community wants leaders who are just going to apologize because they want to keep the peace, community also needs to know that leaders are going to stand by their decisions and stand up for what they're going to be representing. So
Gus Anahue, you've been very quiet throughout all of this. It has
listening.
It has touched you as well.
For sure.
There was the recent publication in the Eastern Door stating you were suspended a day for breach of confidentiality. Now that it's public, how does that affect you doing your job and trust from the community for you?
I'm human. I'm not perfect. And when the time came for me to present myself to the council, I said, the Grand Chief's position and office should be held to the highest standards. And if you feel that what I did was warranting some kind of a censure, then you do what you have to do. And I'll live with the decision. Although personally, I don't feel that I breached confidentiality, because the meeting that took place was an informal update. It wasn't an official council meeting. I was asked if certain questions or statements were made, and I didn't lie about it. I basically gave a shrug of the shoulders. I didn't confirm, but I guess body language can tell tales as well, and it's unfortunate. I tend to agree with Gina. Sometimes, you insult people. I think her and I even had some interpersonal conflicts at time, and we actually, reached out to one another and were able to have a conversation, apologize, reconcile, and move forward. And I think, sometimes that's what you need to do in leadership. And so I can't disagree with the council. Like I said, it was handed to me. I had a 1-day suspension. In the grand scheme of things, it's not the worst thing that could have happened. I don't take it lightly. In the 15 years that I've been on council, this is the first time I've had an act of censure on me. There is no escalator, in terms of you get a verbal or a written warning. And I think there's a difference in the one that Gina had, because there's different kinds of complaints against chiefs. So if a community member makes a complaint against a chief, it gets triggered through the disciplinary measures regulations. There's an investigation. Decision is made by the Court of Ganawage. Recently, with the whole governance work that we've been doing internally, now there's a new complaints policy for if MCK employees have a complaint against Radizahayas. And now we just passed one today about internal chief against chief complaints. So if they're internal and they're, sometimes they can have very minor infraction of, conduct. Does it have to be public? If the community feels that in the grand scheme of things, everything a chief does, if they're sanctioned, should be made public. But in the past, it hadn't been done like that. So there's different processes. And
before we take a commercial break, I want to get to this because this came to mind with all 21 candidates who came in here and got their 16 minutes of airtime on the radio. They asked the question, how would you be able to work with everybody at the table? And how would you be able to? I mean, if there, and I'm hearing opposition right now, I feel some tension in the room, and there certainly will be tomorrow night when 21 people are all together for the Meet the Candidates night as well. Cody, let's start with you on this one. How do you work with people that you don't agree with, or may have had something that led to a suspension either of yourself or of somebody else caused by what you've said?
Listen, at the end of the day, our responsibility is to the community, so you have to put everything at the door when you get in, and then you deal with it after the meeting. And, as we were just saying in this current subject right now, we know from all the reports, it's happened since late last summer, early fall, still showed up every day, and we still passed things that needed to get passed. It didn't turn into a brawl or anything like that. That's not what we're there for. You got to just keep going and moving on, and you deal with that other stuff as it comes up. But first and foremost, it's community. Community comes first no matter what, and you just got to leave everything aside.
Either if you want to jump in?
No, I completely agree. And I know him and I, maybe we don't see eye to eye on a lot of things, but he knows our relationship at work is professional, and we've been able to put stuff aside. And like he said, for the common good of the community and the work that we do. And because we've been entrusted these high-level positions from the community, like you said, you have to check it at the door. You got to be able to work with everybody. You got to find a way to, become peaceful again if there is any kind of dissension or upsetting. And that's something I've always encouraged as being the Ia de Nera de Zahayas, that we're not always going to agree at the table. We're not always going to see eye to eye. But if it does become something where you've hurt somebody's feelings or, it became interpersonal, go have lunch together, go sit together, go find a way to move beyond it, because we have big issues to deal with at this table, and we can't let that kind of stuff get into the mix of our day-to-day. So
is lunch happening after July 6th? On that note, we're going to take our first commercial break here on K1037. The Grand Debate is brought to you by this radio station as well as by Ioriwa and the Eastern Door. We'll be back after this.
The jackpot for this Friday night's radio bingo is $10,000.
Bridge at the Get and Go on the 138 in Kahnawake.
At TD,
It's 28 in the evening. We're going at least another hour, if not an hour and a half, depending on how this goes. And so far, so good. All right, let's get right back into it with our three candidates, Gasanahawe, Cody, and Gina. And Gina, one of the questions that came in from one of the callers was, how do you know so much about this lawsuit when you're not on council now and haven't been for 3 years?
Well, there's been quite a bit in print. And for myself, you know how it is in the gaming world, people talk, and I still know people involved in the gaming world, and there's little bits and pieces that have been coming out about the situation, and people have actually contacted me even about my running from the gaming world and asking me questions. So that and our community, again, nothing is really secret. Things are coming out of council. I mean, there are little bits and pieces that people are hearing, whether it's true or not. I mean, that's what we want to know, and that's where the problem is about the transparency. If you look at the communiques, there are so many meetings, that client attorney privileged meetings, where people are, making assumptions. So what's real and what's not, I think is one of the key problems right now with the community and council.
Why is that happening? Let me put it to both of you. Why are there so many more? And I'm noticing these. Greg and Steve are noticing them as well. All the reporters in town. Why are there so many client attorney privileged issues in front of the council every week?
So anything we're dealing with that pertains to current litigation, I think needs to be client attorney privilege, because otherwise those minutes can be
used in court.
That all of the business dealings that we're doing that aren't finalized yet, there's still a lot of preliminary exploration about the things that we could potentially do, or if we do finalize it, that we can't necessarily have, how do I want to put it, we can't show our cards at this point, right? It's premature. And a lot of times, when it is ready, we can bring it to community meetings or...
Can we go back and be specific about this? Can you give us an example of how it went, let's say, with Hydro-Quebec and the Hertel line? How long it took to get that, make it public?
Well, there was so much uncertainty. We didn't know if they were going to get the approvals through NYSERDA. We didn't know what structure.
How long from when those discussions began to when
Oh my
the
God,
public
Joe
saw-
Norton was still Grand Chief when the
Yes.
discussions came for Hertel. He was the one who wrote a letter to New York basically saying that if the Mohawks weren't a part of this, it wasn't going to go forward. So it's been a long time in the making, and like we said, we had to build trust. We had to create a relationship with Hydro, because in the past it wasn't one that was very good, considering the past land expropriations, all of the tower lines that were going through the community that we hadn't finalized any kind of compensation to the community. So there was a lot of work that had to go into establishing that relationship before we could even move into this. So,
Well, just because the question was posed, so yes, I agree. There's been a lot of client attorney privilege discussions, and I will agree. In terms of litigation files, those need to be kept client attorney privilege. Yes, on one hand, the business ventures that are being explored. Obviously, there's non-disclosures that they would like to enter into. However, I think we need to look at another mechanism on how we can get to the community and be able to communicate that. And I know in the past, through different senior read discussions, there was sort of closed community meetings, no media, just to be able to give the community the information so they know. Perhaps that's something we need to look at going forward, or not have to look at, we need to do. We need to start meeting with the community more and being able to communicate that in a closed door setting, so people can understand this is where we're at. This is what it kind of is. We're giving high-level stuff, more than what's on communiques, as we go forward through these
What
processes.
do you mean in a closed door setting? Because, I mean, these kiosks have been going on for a few years now. I think since you began as Ohenduia Dinera Tsitsayas in the last 3 years. Those questions can be posed in a one-on-one setting. What do you mean in a closed door session?
I mean, in an actual community meeting, like it's, this is what the topic is about. We need everybody here, and then it's explained. This is where we're at. We can't divulge too much information. Similar to what my understanding was how some previous seniority meetings used to happen with the community.
Glad you brought up scenery, because we're going to talk about that in a second. Gina?
Well, in the past, we did give that information, and we did have it at community meetings. And if Gus can remember, there was actual disclosure of an amount of money that we received for hydro, right? And we had asked the press in that meeting not to print that amount of money because the other communities would know, and then it would cause maybe a problem for hydro. So we always gave that information, and I think that's the unfortunate part that happened here is this current council has decided that this information has to be kept secret, and it never was before, and that's why you have the friction with community at the moment.
How long ago are we talking about here? If you're asking, the journalists not to print the numbers?
Well,
I mean, with social media and everybody
Mike DeLille
releasing
was Grand Chief
everything.
at the time when
Yes.
that happened.
Yes.
So it would have been pre-2015.
Yeah, we still shared the information with the community in a community meeting.
And it didn't get out.
There was an issue, yes, it did. The numbers were printed when we had asked it not to be, and there was an issue.
Okay, and that's in the media, but with social media, community members certainly were on Facebook and Instagram, and was Instagram around in 2015? Yeah, it was, but it wasn't what it is now. But Facebook was there. People weren't really posting that kind of stuff then. Now they are. Behavior is different. How much do you take that into account when it's, you're not just concerned about the Fifth Estate
But at the
getting
time,
after things?
Hydro said they were only concerned about the amount of monies because they didn't want it to get out, because then they would have to give that amount or more to the next community. And that's the real issue that they had. The rest of it, they didn't have an issue sharing it. And I think this community is entitled to know that information. We shared everything. I'm really surprised at how things evolved, and that's part of the reason why when I ran in the last election, I said I would love to have cameras in our official council meetings. Unfortunately, a lot of people say things behind closed doors that they don't say in public, and I thought this would be a perfect mechanism to know who you're really voting for, right? Because you're going to see them in action. You're going to see how they vote, what they say, and their opinions, and you see that on the outside. People do that because unfortunately, sometimes they don't always do what they say they're going to do.
Well, and not everything was shared, though. So I think, to say everything was shared, is a bit of a overstatement. I think things were shared that could be shared because there's still things from, when you were at council and even predating myself that weren't shared, and even when I got into council asking questions about things, being told agreements couldn't be shared, they couldn't be sent, you had to read them sort of in a room and they couldn't be sent copies or things like that. So, I think, I know we want to say, and I can agree, information was, there was more information being given in previous terms. Now things are a little bit different. I think MCK is venturing into more business opportunities. So, it's definitely a change of, I don't want to say pace, but we have to change the way we've been operating to be able to communicate to the community more efficiently.
We had actually invited community members to come and view some of the documents and agreements at that time. It was open to them because they wanted to know. They said, this is our right. And I don't think that's changed. People want to know. I know the social media things get out, but it's better to get out accurate information than wrong.
Completely agree.
All right, let me just remind the audience, please don't send me stuff personally because I'm dealing with getting stuff from Steve and Greg, and we're working on the questions. Please call 450-638-1313 if you have questions. So I mentioned Signoria a moment ago. It's been 1,000 years. Where are we on Signoria? Where is the community on getting lands back? I mean, it was such a fight to get the lands back for the 30. Most of them are back, not even
211 outstanding.
Right. So, all right. So start with that since you brought it up.
Okay. So I think that you'll see in this next term, regardless, that those 211 acres that are owed to the community because of the Highway 30 will be returned. where they will be, if they will be contiguous to Ganawage proper, if they will maybe be up near Jawarodu or somewhere different. There is lands being looked at to be returned to Ganawage. With regard to scenery, we just recently signed a renewed KCR MOU. Scenery has its own table, it has its own working group. We're hopeful to get things moving again. It had been dormant for quite a number of years.
I did interviews with Mike DeLille about this when he was Grand Chief in our old building, so that's more than 10 years ago.
I know, and it was on the lack of the part of the government not wanting to appoint somebody. And then when Minister Miller became Minister of Indigenous Affairs, and then we asked for a special appointment for a special ministerial representative, Deborah Korber was appointed, and we were able to get movement and traction now, and hopefully a renewed negotiation table will happen pertaining to scenery in this term.
So the technical staff at MCK is doing a phenomenal job on it. I wanted to say that first and foremost. I mean, the wealth of knowledge and corporate history they have on this, cannot be replaced. And, that's a worry as well, because it has been a very long time, that this file's been at the table, way preceding myself. The problem I have, though, is what was just kind of stated, is we're waiting for Canada. We can't wait for Canada because they're developing the whole scenery. And we need to make movements politically from the MCK table, from the Council of Chiefs. We have to make political movements, whether that's setting up and, dare I say the word occupy. We need to pressure Canada and put that pressure on them to come to the table. Because right now, if we're just sitting there saying, we're waiting for you, how long does it take to get anything from any government? But when they need something, of course, they're quick to ensure that they take it. But here, we'll be waiting forever, regardless of a negotiation protocol. Conservatives are coming in. That's going to be the biggest threat. Right now, the Liberals are on their way out, and we need to start leveraging that momentum. And we have to push and push and push. And yes, 211 acres that are outstanding from Highway 30.
More than 10 years.
More than 10 years. Also, that was a gold mine that could have been leveraged at that moment. There were so many moves that could have been made politically, that we just didn't do. And that's something, if I'm successful, we need to start doing. We need to start pushing that envelope like we used to in the past. And not being afraid to upset the outside. Yes, we want a relationship with them, but at the same time, they're occupying our land. And they need to be reminded of that. And we need to start saying, you have X amount of time to get us the land back. If not, we're going to start taking. And that's plain and simple. And that's what's going to get the governments to move, not waiting for them to come to the table and do something, because governments change frequently.
Actually, we were already working on that when I had left. We were working on pressure tactics, and we were brainstorming on that. So when nothing happened in these last 3 years, I was really disappointed to see that none of it happened. And there were other chiefs that were involved that found some lands that we could have bought back. We actually went and visit those lands, and I actually had brought land to the table that was up near Jawarodu, over 100 acres, 21 acres maybe. And we were talking about pressure tactics, like putting up billboards and making people aware that if you're going to develop on any of our seigneurie lands, that land is under a claim and you are infringing upon our lands. This is just one example of ideas that we were working on. So I thought that work would continue, but all I seen in the last 3 years was a renewal of an agreement, and
So the MRC de Roussillon, all of the mayors that are in that area, we had to educate them. We had to go through a whole PowerPoint and inform them that, you're on our land, and go through the whole history of the grievance all the way back to King Louis XIV. But even before that, we all know about the nation claim and so forth, but that's not our place. Regardless, these people, the mayors, were put on notice. And a lot of them, it was like, what? And so imagine the neighbors, or the residents, And I agree with Cody, we could take actions. Everything in the last little while has been, well, let's take the diplomatic route, right? We're trying to do things with the government. I think a renewed KCR MOU to start negotiations, you can't negotiate without parameters to get us to the table. But what he's saying is, well, let's go out there and make noise and then force them to the table. So it all depends on your style, you know. Either you're going to do it aggressively and force them, or you're going to do it in a way where it's about mutual respect and sitting at the table and finding a way that works. But don't get me wrong, you know, there's a way where politics is a dance. You can slap somebody in the face on one side, but be shaking their hand on the other. So it's about knowing how to deal with your opponents, and then you got to know how to be able to do it. It's not always about just being aggressive, and so.
Before you respond to that, I just we did get a mention from one of the callers with the acronyms Kahnawake Canada Relations
KCR.
Memorandum of Understanding, KCR MOU.
Yeah.
So they're asking that please say
Stop
the whole
using them.
thing. I run into this with athletes,
so used to that.
and you guys are used to it as well when you're talking amongst yourselves and working at the table. Gina, you wanted to respond.
Well, again, you know, Gasanahawe said that they had to educate them, but I had started that work myself when I was there originally, and that was through the economic development. When I started working with the MRC, which is the surrounding communities of Kahnawake was a blacked out territory within the map. So everything that they did, they would get together and talk about economic development, but never included Kahnawake. Well, I had worked on that, and we changed that, and we established a relationship to say, what you're doing is on our lands, and we talked about the port because they wanted to put a port in Ville St. Catherine. And we said, no, this isn't going to happen. This is seniority lands. There is a claim, and we started to work with them, and they started to invite us to their meetings to keep us abreast to what they were going to do as far as development was going. So this work had already started, and Dewa Dunizakta had got involved, and we were actually on top of a lot of the stuff, and we were saying we need to even maybe try to put a injunction to stop some of the development, but they never went through with the port.
Cody, what's your plan if there is occupation, and help those who are there if they get arrested, if police move in, or, you know, God forbid, military?
Well, and that's the thing, like, you know, that's the nuclear option, but we're sitting here just twiddling our thumbs. You know, those are always... People are at that point right now. You know, we have the old mill site, you know, that we've been talking about for years now in Delson. You know, it's been recognized as Kahnawake. You know, we need to move on that. And there's been a little bit of movement on it right now. But, you know, I had said, you know, you can have people out there, you know, exercising their rights on the land. Really, at the end of the day, that's what people want to hear too, is that the council is supporting them. You know, and it's a council sort of initiative, or not even initiative, but, you know, these are just things out of the frustration, because every time I drive into the seniority, you're just seeing more and more of it being developed. Where once it used to be wide open green spaces, condominiums are being put up all over the place. You know, and that's meaning more people that are going to traverse our roads. So we need to do something to put a halt to all that development. And in terms of the education, I had said right from when I got in, why can't we just put up billboards right at the edge of our current boundaries, and I put that in quotes, with the maps? And then you don't need to continuously have to educate the outside mayors or municipalities, and people know. Some of them have been long-standing politicians, you know, so they know where they are. It's just there's no bite coming from the MCK. It's all wait and see, and wait on Canada.
And I feel like that's absolutely true, because the work had been started and you let off the gas. That's how it seemed to me. You know, you should have stayed on the work that we had already started. And I guess that's part of why I'm here today, because a lot of the work that was started, it just stopped. And another example would be like the tax card situation. You know, I had been talking with the surrounding mayors about the lack of use of our tax exemption card in all of the stores and services around us. And the Chateauguay mayor had actually told me, he said, I would like to sit down and meet with you. And, you know, I'm going to bring this to my Chamber of Commerce to ensure that all of our business owners will accept that card. And then I never heard nothing after I was out of office. That work didn't resume either. So there was a lot of things that were in play, and, you know, the gas was
So which mayor was that? The previous one or the current?
That was the previous, yes.
Right. Okay.
So at the Grand Economic Circle that took place, I want to say November 2022. It was right after we came out of COVID and being able to have gatherings again. Other First Nations are really, I don't know if the word is jealous, envious of us having point of sale tax exemption. I don't know if many people know this, but this is a negotiated agreement that MCK has for Kahnawake who have bank card 070. So if somebody comes here from Aguasasne or somewhere else and they have a different number, their card is not eligible for point of sale tax exemption. So we were always saying, well, that's up to your government. When we did it at the time, I wasn't on council, so why it was done for only our people, but we have that. The problem, like Gina was saying, is less and less stores are honoring it, and it's becoming problematic. And in the past, we had an employee working in legal. Oh my God,
John Latour.
John Latour, thank you. And it had to shift over to client-based services to ensure that, you know, if community members have complaints about stores that are not honoring it, because it's by law. So the finance minister at the time for Quebec was there at the Grand Economic Circle. I said, other First Nations can ask for the same agreement, but what would be the point? Because your store owners, business people are not honoring the law. So you need to fix it and come up with an enforcement mechanism to ensure that it's working for our people. So more follow-up will happen on that, but I know that it's been in their ear that it's not being honored the way it should be.
Cody, last word before commercial.
I mean, the enforcement mechanism is telling the community which stores, because the outside knows. And I was a peacekeeper at the time when the council at the time made the decision to sort of boycott Chateauguay, and the economic downfall that their businesses suffered because our community members go and they like to, and they have the means, you know, to purchase various different goods and services, you know. So these things need to be communicated, because if they're going to stop taking the status card, which they're supposed to be, well, then their businesses are going to suffer. And those are the tactics and things that we need to start pushing and saying, this store is not taking it anymore. We're trying to address it, but in the meantime, boycott it.
You're listening to Grand Debate 2024. Gina Deer, Cody Daibo, Gasanahawe, Sky Deer on K1037 in collaboration with Ioriwa and the Eastern Door. We'll be back after this.
Hey, instead of
with Gina Cody and Gus Anahaway here again. Our thanks going out to Greg Horn and Delaney Kelly from Ioriwa, Steve Bonspiel, Marcus Bancuti, and Eve Cable from the Eastern Door. Heather Bowersfeld is answering the phones here at K1037. Dennis Stacy at the controls, Luke Dybo, and Jared Jacobs also on cameras today. You can watch this on YouTube. That'll be up there afterwards as well, but it's live right now on YouTube. And of course, K1037.com. The YouTube channel is K1037 Gotnawage. All right, so there's so much. Why is there such a large turnover of MCK employees of late?
That's a great question, and that's something I think that I can't even answer. I think we need to start looking at our employees as well. And I know there's been a lot of changes, but we got to really start investing in the people at MCK and doing things, I think, overall as a community as well. Because, let's face it, the MCK has been taking a lot of hits, and, people kind of getting wrapped up. And a lot of times it's not the individual people, when people say, oh, the MCK, and they start, I don't want to say negative comments, they're voicing their frustrations. It's not at everybody. And, I wonder if it's not, trying to do more things for the employees, and how we can relate to them. And as a community, start making the MCK look like this is the place to be by having great wins, by getting land back, by pushing the envelope.
So are you talking politically or are you talking structurally?
Probably a little bit of both at the end of the day. I think there's got to be better incentives, in terms of how we take care of the employees. But then when you go out into the community saying, I work at the MCK and, there's a lot of great things happening that get kind of missed because of all the
lack of transparency? Is that what you're alluding to?
Yeah.
Either of you want to address
I
this?
don't think it's that at all. I just think it's a differing of circumstances. I've seen people leave because there's better opportunities for them at different community organizations. There's been burnout. People just get tired of doing the same thing for 20 years. They want a different challenge. Obviously, we've seen council members leave the positions, which I heard a lot of negative feedback, but sometimes these positions in executive offices open up. And look at the previous one was there for almost 30, 40 years. So, if that opportunity presents itself and they want to, take a shot at it, it's a fair process like anybody else. You apply and, you have to go through the interview. Nobody was handed a job, so to speak, and I think that's a big misconception. There's new leadership. We have a new executive director. There's a whole new executive office. There's been a lot of change in policies. People don't like change. So I think there's a barrage of reasons why people have left the MCK. I don't think it's a matter of, the organization, the ship is sinking and people are jumping. It's just, the reality of sometimes everybody's reasons are different.
Well, obviously, I worked there for a long time. I have relationships with people who are still there. I have family that work there, and I'm getting a lot of feedback from employees, especially when I said I would start running. And there's a huge combination of reasons why people are leaving. And I think it's the lack of stability, first off. There is no real succession planning that has happened within the organization, and some of the key directors and persons that have left have been replaced by people who are trying to play catch up and learn their roles. There was just recently a financial officer that left.
Revenue officer.
Yes, that has left. And there is just such a huge turnover that the ones that actually are working are getting burnt out because they're putting a lot of pressure on the people who have the corporate knowledge or the experience. And then there is the what they feel is imbalance, for the workday. There are people who are just loaded with tasks. They're getting burnt out. The lack of transparency is definitely an issue. People working in the organization are actually getting flack from some individuals in the community. Well, you work there, you should know. And they're like, well, I actually don't know either. So I think right now the instability is showing within the community, and it's really unfortunate. It's going to have a ripple effect, and it's going to take a while because all the people who have the corporate knowledge are not there.
So Gina, let me interrupt you. What do you do? If you're elected, what do you do as Grand Chief to repair that problem? Or is this systematic of the modern workforce everywhere?
It's a small portion, I think, is systematic. Again, there are people who have the corporate knowledge that really we have to tap back into them and ask them to help out contracts for a duration of time to get people oriented into these jobs. And that's what they're doing with the education director. And I was really glad when I spoke to her at the graduation, and she told me there's succession planning and she's going to ease the new person into the job, and that needs to happen. And some of the problem is we're hiring outside of the community. First off, they don't know the job and they don't even know the community. And then these people are leaving because they find it, I guess, just a lot of pressure trying to orient with the community and the organization.
Of course.
Because I just learned at the housing and social assistance unit, I was told that there's an actual security guard that guards the door there. And I was like, really? One of the members there had said, yeah, you've never gone in there? And I said, well, no, not until, the
You checked it out?
No, I haven't gone in there. But, I mean,
Can either of you confirm that?
I believe so, because they share the office at the housing unit with the social assistants and various different client-facing services. So they had, because there was an incident, somebody had went in there extremely upset, and people had talked about in different settings, like, well, why, like the main building, why do you have to get buzzed in and things like that? It's no staff, or receptionist, needs to have to be faced with such aggression. And that's where I think at the leadership level, we need to get in and see what the problem is so that we can advocate for it at the higher level and see, yes, burnout is a huge factor, and we need to start lightening the load, so to speak. Of course, there's roles and responsibilities that need to be done, but I mean, the blue collar park, that thing's been talked about for years. They're still in a decrepit state, as any other units as well that are understaffed. I get, we need to do studies and things like that to make sure we're using community resources as best as possible, but we can't also expect 3-4 people to be doing everything in the community, like environment per se, with all the environmental issues that we are going through. They need the resources, and that's where, as the political body, going down and meeting individually, because the organization is so huge now, 350 plus employees, and it's going to keep growing because the needs of the community are growing. So we need to be able to, at the top level, go down and see what's really wrong. And I know they're doing surveys and they're trying, they're doing food trucks for the employees, trying to build up morale, but more can be done. And you just got to get down and hear on the floor.
I just want to go back to the comment that Gina made earlier about these high-level positions and hiring out. We need our community members to get the higher level education as well to fill these high level positions. You can't just get a job because you're from Kahnawake. These are high level positions we're talking about in the executive office, like we're talking about managing how many employees, budgets, a $65 million budget. So we're talking about executive revenue officer, executive financial officer, executive director. These are high level positions. So we need to encourage our young people, because obviously, the leadership and the positions that are there's going to be retiring. Yes, there's got to be succession planning. So we got to make sure that we're working with our young people to come up with a trajectory that they could get on a path so that they can grow themselves into these jobs for the future.
Gina, you mentioned succession planning through the KEC,
Yes.
and that is happening, and we've done interviews with Robin about that. Did you do any of that in your previous terms on council?
We were trying to do that, and that was when the director of public safety was retiring. We had brought that whole situation of succession planning, and that work also had started. I don't know where it went, because we seen that there was an issue there, and it ended up being Lloyd who left and took the position. But we knew at that time, along with the justice of the peace, we were going to have some real big problems if we didn't get working on this stuff. But the thing is, in the organization, we just keep hiring more people and hiring more people. And I don't think that's the solution. One of the things that I got as far as feedback too is the fact that people have new ideas, and there's a lot of people who don't want to hear the ideas. You know, as an organization, you need to build a team. You need to work together. And if somebody has a way of changing things to make it more easier and efficient for the team, people have to open up and want to accept that.
Well, is there not a review process in place for managers of each department?
We've had
And I
reviews in
mean,
the
and
past.
is this is this a political thing, or is that to the ED's office?
And that's where the confusion of the community lies, and that they expect us to meddle in the day-to-day affairs of the administration. And there is a separation. As a matter of fact, today we passed the relationship framework between the executive director's office, the council of chiefs, and the grand chief's office. This was a policy document that has always been non-existent. So now it lays out the parameters, because I think there's an expectation. There's been such an evolution at the MCK. There was a time when the chiefs were actually directors of units, right? So you had your political and you were involved in the day-to-day. So now there's an expectation, I guess, that chiefs can go in there and they're going to change all the policies. They're going to direct staff on how to do their jobs. We have a whole, like we said, structure, and people don't understand the structure of organization. So the political should be focusing more on political and let the administration run the,
But if
the
employees-
organization.
But I
If
agree
employees-
on
Hold on,
that
Cody.
part.
Cody.
So if employees are leaving, though, you know, for better opportunities, to me, then that becomes an issue that we need to talk about, because why can't they remain at the MCK and explore those better opportunities internally? Why do you have to leave? And I get it, you know, for personal growth and for various reasons that way, but I'm not here to say I'm going to tell somebody what to do. I'm going to make sure that the workplace is a healthy environment and that they're happy at the end of the day. It's not about this is how you have to do this and this is how you have to do that. But we need to be able to understand service delivery at the end of the day. If that's affecting the community overall, then it becomes a council issue.
And that's what I'm getting at. It does affect the service to the community. And with the hiring, just keep hiring assistants, it's affecting the dollars. And I don't think hiring somebody else is what the Band-Aid solution is. And I've been opposed actually to a few hirings in the past, saying, you know, you need to really look at the job and the duties and what this person is doing before you hire another assistant. Because to me, the organization is starting to look like what Indian Affairs used to be. And it was very bureaucratic. They were renting lots of office space and hiring more and more employees. And then the monies weren't reaching the people that the monies were intended for because of the administration.
There was a hiring freeze.
Yes.
We weren't hiring any new staff because we were trying to right size the organization and make sure people are the right fit for the positions. And if not, could they be moved to somewhere else within the organization?
And that's what I was going to touch on, is that, in fact, I think we're probably losing more than we're hiring right now, because after this last budget, there was a surplus in the amount of vacancies. You know, money that's been set aside from last year to this year, there was about a $3 million surplus in terms of unfilled positions. So, yes, the term right sizing had been tossed around, but the fact is that you're bleeding more employees that are coming in, and you see the list every couple of weeks or every week. You know, MCK, there's no deadlines attached to certain positions because people aren't hiring, and I feel it's the negative persona that's kind of going over the MCK right now, and that's what needs to change.
Okay. I want to switch gears here, because I mean we can go on forever on that, and people do hear about those job vacancies 80 times a day right here on K1037. We're running, you know, those spots all the time. Where does everybody stand on the residency law? Gina, let's start with you.
I was there when it came into its inception, you know. I mean, I've always supported
Enforcing.
Well, I know they were working on mechanisms to enforce, because it is a problem, right? And I know that in the past, the assistance of the peacekeepers was an issue. I don't know if that's actually been resolved. Is that an issue currently, or?
So the regulations concerning evictions were just passed in the last couple of months. There was just the recent hiring of the compliance officer. Everybody knows that Mike DeLille left his position as council chief and is now the registrar. So it seems that everything is there in terms of the structure now, because there's been, again, such an evolution in that law as well, formerly known as the Ganawage membership law. We had to separate out all of the residency components, because I think when people are upset about membership. They're upset about who's residing in the community, not who is belonging and who's a part of us. So the necessity to hive the two out. So now we have the KKL, Ganyagahaga of Ganawage law, which identifies who is a part of the we. And then we have the residency law, who could reside here. And there's different permits, if you will. If you're on the KKR, the Ganyagahaga Ganawage registry, you automatically have residency. If you have less than 4 great-grandparents and you have 3, you could be a AKR, approved Ganawage resident. You get to live here for the rest of your life. If you have less than that, then there's a requirement to get a permit. And then there's different types of permits for school, for work, for issues pertaining to, I'm trying to remember the word, like if you had to take care of somebody that was ill. So
Humanitarian?
No, it's something like that. I can't remember the exact term. But anyways, my position is everybody should be on one of the lists in the community. We know that the federal list, just because you have a status card does not make you a Mohawk of Ganawage. That's the federal list. So unless you're on the Ganawage Ganyagahaga registry, then we could say, well, you're a Ganyagahaga of Ganawage. Proved Ganawage residents, they're still a part of us, But if people are still living here illegally and you're not Ngwehunwe and you don't have the reason to be here post 1981, then my position is you shouldn't be living here. And I've always been of that opinion.
There's not much that can be said. I mean, the law is the law. Did it take longer, I think, for the implementation? Yeah, should it have happened a lot sooner? Of course. But, I mean, different things needed to be in place prior. Hirings need to happen. Things needed to be worked out. But it's here now with the compliance officer, and I think that'll be made public kind of soon. Not quite sure of the actual date, but all that's going to start rolling out.
I just wanted to clarify something. Today was the last council meeting of the current council. When will the next one be after July 6th? Not till on the 8th, on that Monday, so that everybody, the 5 new seats will be filled plus whatever. If incumbents don't get voted in, right? It could be a full overhaul. Nobody knows that at this point, and that's when people will vote on July 6th, and we'll have the results for you here right away on K1037. I know I'll be there for that. So Gina, where do you stand when you see something like people protesting in front of somebody's house?
Where do I stand? Well, that's the whole reason why they had wrote the complaint against me, because I didn't want to go stand outside and protest in front of somebody's house. They said that I didn't uphold the law. And I said, of course I uphold the law. I actually left the community when I first got married. I was married to Rocky, who was a non-native, and we moved actually to Vancouver. We moved far away. And I've always adhered. Nobody had to tell me to leave. What disturbed me about having to stand in front of somebody's house was the impact of the children in that house. And we always talk about, the faces to come and how we need to protect the 7th generation. And the people that were adamant that they were staying have a different point of view. But what we were doing to the children in the house, to the neighbors and things like that, I didn't agree. And people got mad at me because I didn't want to put on the display that was happening.
So how do you reconcile the two?
By doing my job and supporting...
enforcing the law, but to an extent?
No, not to an extent. Why? Because I'm not protesting? If you're a leader, you're not following.
Well, how do you feel about the protest without you? And if it has the desired effect, let's say?
Well, you're asking me to do something that I didn't ethically believe in, so I did not do that. I supported it in the way I should have. And that was to agree to the terms of the law as it was written, and I supported all of council, but I didn't stand outside was the one thing that somebody didn't approve of. They thought I should be picketing out there.
Thoughts?
I mean, I agree with that sentiment, and I have to think about it, even my previous career as a police officer, and I was at some of those protests where I was there to keep the peace, Yes, our community has a right to protest, and by no means am I saying don't protest, but in terms of if there's children in the house, we have to be a little bit, I think, open to the idea that there are different ways to get our point across, especially internally, but, externally as well. But for sure, I mean, the law is the law now. The processes are in place now. So I don't think there's going to be a point of, whether or not we have to take sides and protest here or protest there. It follows the process. And, if people want to go out and physically be there to support, I support that. Myself as a leader, you have to abide by the law and not take sides. What is in the law is what you have to follow.
And further to that, the person who actually wrote and read the letter, that felt that I wasn't upholding the law, I've actually worked with her, and I have a good relationship with the individual now, and for myself, I didn't take it personally because she felt like she was doing something that was right by her, because we all have our own morals and scruples and our own ethics that we follow, right? And you can't ask somebody to break that. The morals and ethics of a person, I would never ask somebody to break that, honestly. And when it comes to children, I have a very, very soft spot. Again, I was also a peacekeeper at one moment in time, and keeping the peace was my priority for this community, and it still is.
All right, let's switch over to housing. This has been something that's been a big problem for quite a while, and there are different aspects to it. First the scandal, and then, the lack of housing.
So we had a housing study concluded that looked at what would be the needs of the community over the next 10 years. And it bothers me when people say nothing has been done in housing, because we did build 14 units. We did revamp all of the multi-dwelling. We did revamp the entire unit. We got new people to work there now. We revised all the policies. So I remember the last election cycle, everybody was harping on language and culture, language and culture. What are you doing for language and culture? So look, now we got a $56 million project that we're about to build. And I know people would say, well, how come you're not taking that money and using it for housing? Well, the monies that we got were specifically for this project. Now you're going to see in this next cycle, regardless if it's me or Cody or Gina sitting here, the housing initiatives that are going to roll out to the community. We just saw this morning that there was and I don't want to preclude the announcement, but some big things are coming, some monies that we never had before in the community for housing, that it's about time. ISK rolling up their socks and giving monies where it should have been for years and years. So there's definitely going to be a lot more housing development.
ISK, Indigenous Services Canada. I'm here
there
to
I go again with the acronym. You're the acronym police.
I'm here to translate for everyone. I think we have a few minutes left before.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
You said 14 units were built. Was it in this last 3 years?
Yes.
14? Where were they built? Because I'm not.
So all of the Lot 106, the sixplexes and the single dwelling homes. Bungalows. Yeah, 14 of them.
Okay, good news, because I didn't know there was that many. But, for myself, the thing with housing is we've had studies done before, and I know you said there's been some more, but there's been so many studies over the years. And I remember when I first got in council in 2012, the late Martin LeBourne talked about the 12 million that we had been sitting on in housing, and we were still sitting on that money, and the political will, if I guess you could say, didn't seem to be there to get this moving. The community members that are leaving, I mean, I feel bad because, they're away from their families. We're very close to our grandparents in this community. We like our aunts and uncles. They're like extended parents, if you will. So it's been very difficult, and the priority for housing was recognized a long time ago. We had a study done. It talked about the individual dwellings. It talked about people who are looking to have like condo styles, elders who don't want the responsibility of houses, but they still wanted units that they could be cared for in. The students, I mean, it was all there. Young couples. So there's a huge need. It has been identified, and we really have to do more about getting those places.
Yeah, and I mean, I couldn't agree more. We know what the needs are, and yes, we like to do studies and, probably too many, and then on top of studies, we'll do surveys afterward just to confirm the studies, but at the end of the day, my position is we have a housing reserve. I'm not saying deplete it, but we need to be able to leverage that to build bigger units, and we have to go up. Our population is growing, and whether we explore, condos for our elders and looking at a whole different kind of revamping of housing, a lot of work has been done this term, and I have to give credit to the housing staff right now, as well as Ryan. I mean, he took this on first year in, a couple months on, he said, I want housing. He's done phenomenal work because, as we know from over the years and what he's reported, lack of rents being paid, things like that weren't done in the past, whether political will or not. But, we are where we are now. Ryan has been focusing on doing that, and it just needs a broader support and the ideas that come up. We talked about earlier about innovation, whether or not they're almost like on the 30 and you have store frontage and then apartments on top. We can do multi-use things to expand what we currently do and just make it better. And we have the resources to do it.
That's going back to the old ways too, right? Living in the back of your store, which a lot of Gatawagarono did.
Not in
Gina,
the
I
back,
guess
on top.
you didn't do that at your store up north, did you? Okay, there's so much governance just signed to the switch to, or the phasing in of going to traditional government, which begs the question: why are the three of you sitting here? Who wants to tackle this first?
It has to be an evolution. It's not going to happen overnight. It's been being worked on for 45 years. 1979, that was the year I was born. So when you think of what was going on at that time and why the community members all at that Knights of Columbus stood up and said, okay, this is the direction that we need to go. When you look at where we were at that time, were we ready? And I've talked to people in both of the longhouses. They said, when that happened, we were all scared. We didn't even know how to take on the responsibility and accountability for, the MCK, the budget, everything. So even now, when you look at all of the things that have happened, I think of that shared community vision statement that we have in 2029. This is where we're going to be. When you look at everything that we've been working toward, language and culture is the priority. Spoken in the home and in the community. That's number one. About a unified people. We have a lot of hurt people in this community. So another big priority that we had set is about working through the trauma. How much trauma-informed training, dealing with the residential school, the impacts. So there's a lot of things that we have to do internally to work on ourselves before we can move to that space. And I have to commend the community, because remember how the last previous community meetings, like there was just a lot of anger and insults and stuff. And then we made that declaration that we got to do different. That's why people don't want to come out. How are you going to get the community engaged in a process to have dialogue when this kind of thing happens? And it just upsets them, and they're like, you know what, I'm just not even going to go. But the last community meeting that we had was probably one of the most productive community meetings I've seen in a long time. People actually came with suggestions, they came with ideas, they came with an open mind and an open heart. And that's the way we need to move into a direction where people feel that their voices are valued, that they have a say in the way we're going. Right now, this is a representative democracy. An MCK election is I check my box, you go ahead and you make the decisions and consult with me. Whereas in traditional government, it's the people now. We're going to have to gather, and we're going to have to find a way to, come to consensus and make decisions, big ticket decisions on behalf of the community. I'm all for it. I think it's a long time coming, and if I'm for anything that's going to bring peace, unity, and strong collectiveness that we've been missing for a long time.
And how does that work? I mean, at the end of the day, and these are all great points, and I think that's the big question is how is that going to work, and how are we going to transition to that? Because right now, life is so busy and so hectic. Now, could you imagine after a long day of work, in whatever field you're working in, you got kids to take care of at home, you got to, fix supper. Now, are you going to a meeting at night? Is it going to be held in the day? People who are working, how are they going to be able to voice their opinions? I think we have to start slowly transitioning and see how that works, though. There's always, for the time being, until we can figure out, where you don't have to pay rent, you don't have to pay hydro, you don't have to worry about where your food is coming from. There's always going to have to be some form of a representative government or some people are going to have to be able to say, I'm the voice for this group, and then how that works, kind of like now. And I meet with community regularly. I try and hold events on my own just to hear what people are saying, to bring that back. So is that how it works? Before it used to be in sections in the community. Is that something? But definitely that how. We know what we want, but how are we going to get there?
Well, I think the first thing we do is we drop the titles. I was never in favor of the title, of chief when I was out there and they would talk to me. Just call me Gina Deer, and that was a point of contention. When we talk about the 8 points of jurisdiction, we're not condoled chiefs and we're carrying a title of chief. And I think, that would be one of the first steps that we could do is drop that title. The second thing I think we can do is go into, like dispute resolution. We have a forum there, SCANA, and here we're having problems within the community. Why are we not pushing that more? Because we're talking and we're getting together and we're resolving things as the one mind. And we have to start practicing and putting into play the things that we do traditionally. These are just little steps that we can do. Overall in the community, everybody's asking, what does that form of traditional government look like? Because we no longer rely on each other the way that we once did. But if you look at the principles of respect, it's like this whole election, everybody's talking about, yes, we support governance and getting back to, the traditional form of government, but it's based on respect. And that's not happening. There's a lot of division that is being created. It's person against person. People are making up stories about people just because they want to trash somebody and not get elected on their own merits and what they can bring to the position. And I think that's where we start here today. I talked about respect the last time that I was on the air. That's the fundamental being of who we are as a people, and taking care of each other. We have to start taking better care of each other, and that's what people are feeling is missing from MCK. There are people in dire need, and I'm looking at the sister community of Aguzaste and the programs that they're putting out there, helping elders with housing, and there's different programs that are coming out of there, and I'm thinking, why are we not doing that here? I go back to gaming and all the discussions I had here at K103 or on KTV talking about that extra revenue that was going to be plugged into the community to fill the void wherever that void was.
Well, I want to talk about that and that revenue and the surplus that was talked about a couple of months ago here. We do have to take a commercial break. You're listening to the Grand Debate 2024 on K1037, brought to you by this radio station, Ioriwa and the Eastern Door. We'll be back. As you just heard, Cody, we're back on the air. It is 7:28. We are going to go to 8 o'clock. We cleared that with all three candidates. Gasanahawe Skydeer, Cody Daibo, and Gina Deer in studio with us at K1037 in the Grand Debate 2024, the third edition of this in the last 4 election cycles. One was Joe Norton was acclaimed, so of course we didn't have a grand debate that year. But the last grand debate, both of the women in the room were part of that. Cody, did you listen to that grand debate from 3 years ago?
Yeah, that was able to be on Facebook at that time.
Yes, it certainly was. Okay, what I want to get to, and Gina brought this up, was gaming, and there's a lot of issues surrounding this. Magic Palace, that's part of a lawsuit against the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake right now, which we talked about off the top of the show. But the money that's coming into the community through gaming and the electronic gaming devices, or EGDs, is quite significant. I think maybe even higher than anybody kind of expected when it was first enacted. I mean, wasn't it $25 million last year just from that? And where is the money going?
That's the number one question, and it's not being hidden away or anything like that, but MCK needs to do a better job, and we just talked about this today as well, and I bring it up all the time. We need to communicate that better and start, I don't want to say pumping that into the community, but investing it into the community for various different shortcomings, as Gina had mentioned prior, about elder housing and different things. That's what we need to start doing.
So why isn't that happening if that money's been coming in for several years now? I mean, this is 4 or 5 years since that began.
As a council, it has to be a priority, and we have to sit down and make it a priority to make sure that those, if it's a policy about how much goes in where, appropriated fund policy, we've been talking that at council for a long time. There's been, we talked about the changeover previously, so work was started, it stopped, but it has to be a priority, and council has to make that a priority.
So there is a wish list in terms of needs for this community. And part of the problem is, and I've been on the council now, it's 15 years. So I remember being on the council when we were running a deficit, an annual deficit for our budget. And there was even a time where we had to take from the housing reserve just to offset. As a matter of fact, we put that back in this year. But, we didn't always have this gravy in terms of the disposable revenue because of the risks that we've taken, whether it was to do Mohawk Online, whether it was to do the EGD project, all these different initiatives that now we're generating revenue. The problem is we've never really had the time to do a comprehensive financial plan of where we need to deploy these monies. So we have a running list. We need, like you said, a new Elders Lodge. That's going to be looked at. And I know KSCS also has more money. So it's a matter of finding the monies that we could use to best service the community. We're about to do a second ice surface at the arena. Gardiwanoru needs a new home.
Hold on, second ice surface?
Yeah, a second.
Outdoor rink.
Oh, an outdoor rink.
Outdoor rink,
okay.
Yeah, for the sports complex. What else? We need a blue collar park. Where the bus depot is, that building, as Cody mentioned, it's dilapidated, it's old. We need to move it. We need a new building. So there's so many needs. We talked about the infrastructure. We got to get water and sewer. Our water filtration plant, it's kind of obsolete now. We need a new one. So there's this whole laundry list. So it's nice to say we're going to just distribute it. Like, I don't know what people want. Like, are we talking about dividends to community members, like on an individual basis? I think that there's so much more that we would rather see for a collective benefit that impacts everybody, because if we gave every single person, I don't know, $1,000, $5,000, we're not at that level yet. And that's why I said I think the Kahnawake Sovereign Wealth Fund was so instrumental that we took monies that we didn't put in at the forefront in terms of skin in the game with Continent 8. We got that $36 million. We put it aside and we said, now we have this nest egg that we're going to make grow money for us for the long term. We're not going to touch it for 10 years. So in 10 years from now, we're going to have an exorbitant amount of money. But I'm not saying we can't do things right now. There are so many things going on for community right now. And I'm just not seeing where people feel that there's a need that it's not happening. Like I said, housing, it's going to happen. It's going to roll out. Social assistance, we just approved today another... what is it called now? Inflation benefit. people on SA are getting more money, even for the summer, for every individual and for children. So there's a lot that's happening in terms of deploying resources externally.
I'm hearing a lot about, the electronic gaming devices, but I'm not hearing anything about Mohawk Online. Mohawk Online has generated, if I remember correctly, $39 million
almost 40.
since the beginning. So $39 million, plus you're talking about the shares from the Continent 8 sale. Now, those monies were supposed to help the everyday person who was in need. And it wasn't about just the collective. It was about enhancing the quality of life for people. And that hasn't happened. Now, I know you took on a court case for the conduct and manage in Ontario, and you had lost that court case. And now, in absence of, the CEO of Mohawk Online, what is the future of Mohawk Online? Where does it stand?
Well, Ontario was a big hit, as well as Gina, from being on the file. Ontario was 50% of the market easily. Now that court case, is settled and didn't go our way. I have my own sort of comments overall about, the approach sort of taken at the time, but it is what it is now, so that's definitely something that's going to be discussed and coming out, that has to come out.
You said you have your comments. Do you want to share them?
I think we were a little bit late to the game to challenge initially. We waited a bit. Again, I rely a lot of how we can as a community mobilize and put some pressure tactics, in terms of when 218 was first being discussed. And Gina, you went to, it was you and Mike, I believe, you presented the standing committee, or was it just yourself?
No, I presented to the standing committee, but we had decided at that time that we would not challenge it because we were not located in Ontario. So when it happened, the challenge, I was really surprised because when I had left, we were not going to do that.
Yeah. So, and I mean, for myself, it was, what can we do here to put the pressure to make sure 218, we get sort of that carve out. But yeah, it's definitely, it's upsetting, to lose Ontario in that sense.
So for the listeners' understanding, Bill 218 was amendments to the criminal code and the legalization of single event sports betting that Ontario ended up launching their own conduct and manage permitting structure and everything. But because we had already been doing online gaming, we didn't want to subject ourselves to get a permit from Ontario. So in essence, we couldn't do business in Ontario. And like you said, it was 50% of the revenue. Now there's a new bill, Bill S268, which is going to further amend the Indian Act and the criminal code. And this time we're also trying to get a carve out because the wording in there kind of relegates us solely to do gaming on reserve. And we all don't like that terminology, and it doesn't give the ability for us to, be able to do gaming beyond the community, which is ridiculous because we've already been doing it. So we definitely need to push for those amendments in the wording. And we went and met with Senator Tanis, who is the sponsoring senator, and other senators in Ottawa to advocate for modifications to the bill.
Those are senators, and traditionally Canadian senators don't have a ton of political say in terms of what the actual parliament does, right? I mean, that goes to the members of parliament, to the Mark Millers, the Gary and Sangaris, those kinds of people. Is that sort of desperation speaking to senators rather than speaking to MPs?
No, because the senator, like I said, was the sponsoring. It's like a private member's bill. So he was the one who put it forward. So if we had his ear to give our perspective on how the draft wording right now is very limited, and then because they're going to have engagement with other First Nations leadership, APA, which is kind of like, there's going to be 3 different kind of hearings. I don't know why. This is a very unique bill, and it touches different, like I said, areas pertaining to our gaming. So, and it's not just us. Don't forget, there's First Nations gaming right across this country. So we definitely need to mobilize and get other leadership on board, which is part of the work that I've been doing on gaming.
And I think people need to be aware that when these bills are passed, and she's saying like a private member's bill, it's usually somebody from the industry, somebody within the gaming industry who's providing the funds to do these legal wordings, and they want to leave us out because we have been a threat. But again, I'm going to ask, where does that leave Mohawk Online for the future?
Not in a very good spot. If half the revenue in half the country, well, not half the country, but half the gambling base, I don't know if that would be the correct word, but it doesn't leave it in a good position.
No,
and that's conversations that have to be had about what is the future and what we're going to do.
But if we're getting still a percentage, what does that look like for the future? Has that been analyzed?
There is no future.
There's no future?
Nope, because in the last year, after the partnership moved in a different direction, and with that major hit, things just started to be on the decline, and it's definitely not going to continue in the way that it has in the past.
So what does that mean? How much revenue are we talking about that potentially will be lost?
It fluctuated, right? Because I think during COVID, that was an anomaly, right? Nobody could go anywhere to do land-based gaming. So, there was a record year in terms of revenue when everybody had to stay home and do online gaming. And then we saw in the next year how it tapered down dramatically, like more than 50%. And every year after that, and this past year was basically...
And the population, I mean, it's really only the younger generations that are doing more online stuff. The baby boomer generation, that's always been more in person, show up land-based wise.
Well, we're seeing a lot of younger people show up down the road.
Well, and that's the poker aspect
at the
as
land-based
well,
poker
part,
electronic gaming device
with
house.
It in tandem, you're there, you might as well. So.
Well, let's talk about Entain. Sports Interaction was sold to them. That agreement is coming to an end?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Okay.
Seriously, when did that happen? I mean,
the writing has been on the wall. Like I said, things. We were hoping, like with the legal challenge as well, that things were going to change in terms of our Aboriginal right argument. Like we said, that we lost that argument or that legal challenge. More to come. I think we discussed whether or not there was case for us to appeal, and at this point, I just kind of think it's run its course, and we're going to have to look at other opportunities for revenue generation.
And with anything, when you take things into the Canadian court, like at the end of the day, the ruling is, you have standing, but we're going to rule in favor of Ontario. It's kind of like with anything that ever comes up.
That's why when I left, we had said do not do that.
Yeah.
It was agreed that wouldn't be done, that court case. If any court case was going to be done, it was Bill 96 because we're located in Quebec.
But the legal challenge was more on the legality of the conduct and manage.
It wasn't an Aboriginal right case at all. It was about Ontario interpreting that they can conduct and manage by outsourcing.
By players who are within their territory.
Yeah, not like how here where it's an actual regulatory body that's conducting and managing the whole system. Them, they're sort of saying, you guys are in the game. Here, you conduct and manage, and then we just get a percentage from it. That's what the challenge was about, which, I mean,
but
you look at it on paper.
Of that, and that's why,
Yeah.
So what would have been the alternative, Gina?
We were working with other Indigenous communities located within Ontario, and I don't know where that work was left because we needed to work with somebody through the Iroquois caucus. We were trying to get actually all of the caucus members on board and go and fight this as a united front.
And were they on board when you were still in office?
The discussions were happening.
We signed an MOU with Six Nations in this term for gaming,
Yes.
and we were trying to get them to develop like a secondary KGC in their own territory so that, we would have a footprint in the Ontario. Things were moving along pretty good, but like we said, you can't win when the the devil's in court, or how does that expression
Well, at the
go?
end of the day, it's, Ganawagi was on its own again. Yeah, we were having those conversations and people are telling you one thing, saying, yeah, we support and we're going to do it. And then you're relying on them to do things. Meanwhile, that date is getting closer and closer. It's, what are you going to do? Kind of, just sort of let it happen and not challenge it at the end of the day. A fight has to be made agreeable, and I've heard that since I got in. When's the right time to challenge something? We're losing ground every day in different things. At one point, when do you stand up and fight?
The time now is to prepare for the end of the show. We've got to take one last commercial break. So I want you to all think about what you're going to say in your final 90 seconds as we're going to wrap up the show. But we do want to talk. Somebody brought up Bill 96, so we're going to talk about education after this as well. You're listening to The Grand Debate on K1037, brought to you by Ioriwa, the Eastern Door, and this radio station. We'll be back.
The jackpot.
Kahnawake, Ioriwa, the Eastern Door with us today. Our thanks to everybody who's really participated, including all of you listening at home or watching on YouTube at K1037 Kahnawake. It's really been very productive. We want to get to a couple last things before we give the candidates their chance to close it out. Bill Law 14, which previously was Bill 96, and the barriers that are being put in place. That, of course, refers to education and the requirement for the French language in CEGEP, 3 core courses in French, or 5 in French, or just 3 French classes in order to graduate 2 years of CEGEP. How, as Grand Chief, would you fight this and support the students? Because Quebec said no. Gina.
Well, if they want to talk about, protecting language, we need to protect our own language first off. And I know they're making some concessions for Indigenous students, right? But the thing is, now these English CEGEPs are only allowed to take so many students. It seems like they're shrinking that. So again, even if they make a concession for us, we may not actually be able to get our students into these colleges because they're talking about, the roles of students, the number of students.
What concessions are they making for Indigenous students now? They said they weren't going to do any more. That was the latest thing 2 weeks ago from Yann Lafreniere.
The understanding is there are less courses that they have to take. That was the last that I had read about. For me, I think they've been making concessions in different areas, not only our students, but businesses also. My daughter opened a new business. She wanted to register the business, and she can't register it in English, but somebody said, to us that try going right there directly. You might be able to register it in Mohawk because it is your language. So there's different things that are coming out in the way of making concessions. But myself as a business person, I'm trying to do business with the government, and the first thing I'm told is, well, we don't have to talk to you in English. It's an option for us. You know, it's affecting us on so many levels, and then you hear about the medical side of it.
Those are the issues. What are the solutions that you would bring forth?
Well, like I was saying, if there was a court challenge that MCK, I think, should have taken, it was that rather than gaming. We need to do something by way of courts. We're located in this province. We're the original people here, and they can't keep doing these things to us, forcing us again to stay on reserve. That's what's happening. You know, it's hard to do business outside. You got medical issues, and now we got to fight to get paperwork in English. You know, it's not right. You're hearing about hospitals. My uncle, for instance, he was just in the hospital and a nurse was scolding him. Well, this is Quebec. You should be speaking French. You know, he's trying to explain to her, I don't understand what you're telling me. And he's getting medical treatment. You know, there's things that have to be fought in the courts. I know it's not something that we like to do, but in this instance, something has to be done. The laws need to change for our rights. This is what I'm talking about when it comes to jurisdiction and rights. This is the case that we go full force on.
When this first started to come to light, myself, Chief Tanya Perra, and my father, Ganasoho, we actually went to Quebec and we met with Legault and we spoke to him and we tried to rationalize with him, I should say, about the impacts that this is going to have on our people, because we're already speaking a foreign language with English. The burden that it puts on First Nation students to have to be trilingual. We've already seen a doctor from our community who couldn't pass the French bar and had to go and work in Ontario. So we definitely laid it out. And as a matter of fact, I seen Yann Lafreniere last Thursday at McGill when McGill announced that they were going to have free tuition for Haudenosaunee students and First Nation students. And I asked him, I said, why are you doubling down? Why are you pushing this so hard? I thought you were going to find concessions, because when we were initially doing all of the protests for Bill 96, they assured us, and as a matter of fact, even assured us, recall when we met in Chateauguay not that long ago when he was present for the fuel spill, we asked if there was going to be some modifications, and we were told that they were still exploring, but then we see this stuff in the media. So in terms of how we go at this now, because I'm frustrated, you know, like I talked about earlier, you make headway in certain areas and then they do stuff like this that just blows your mind, that it doesn't help us to have a conducive working relationship if they're not going to take into account how this is impacting our people. So I think, you know, there already is like a class action lawsuit with our old buddy there, Julius Gray. We can lend support to that. I know the AFNQL has also a court case pending, so we are trying to find ways. It doesn't always have to just be Kahnawake standing alone, because people external to the community have been asking for our voice to stand with them in solidarity against this. It doesn't just impact, you know, Ungwehue. It's impacting English-speaking persons, Anglophones, all around this province.
Cody.
And just on top of that, I think FNEC is also launching. They were asking for support from all the different First Nation communities, which, I mean, Kahnawake is fully behind.
The acronym?
First Nations Education Council.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry again. But, I mean, these are the things also that at the time, and I mean, we can't go back, you know, but I just wanted to say to the community, I had advocated that at the time we were still talking Hertel. And I said this was a time to leverage that, because the only way New York had agreed to Hertel was because Kahnawake was a partner. We could have used that because Legault had stated openly that this was going to be billions of dollars into the Quebec economy. That's where we would have been able to leverage that project and say, unless you make concessions now, before it becomes enacted or before anything rolls out, you make them now. If not, we're out.
And where do you start and where do you stop? I mean, if you want concessions, there are a lot of issues that you want concessions on, right?
Well, that's it. We need to start. There's all these different projects that they need us for, and that we decide we're just going to go ahead because, you know, we're trying to be diplomatic. But no, we have to be able to leverage our position and our location, because it's key for everything in this region. Everything passes through our territory, and that's the things that we need to do. Legal challenges, are coming. Quebec, they initiated their notwithstanding clause, so it couldn't be challenged beforehand. But the minute it became law, the lawsuits were all coming. I think Justice one had passed where they were saying it had to be done in French. That one was retracted. That was one of the first losses that Bill 14 or Law 14 had faced. And more are going to come, because you can't be in a society now where you're saying you can only communicate in French.
Well, was there not one thing that you guys sent a letter in Ganyageha to the government?
That was with the fuel spill. So initially when we were getting communications from MELCC, or the Ministry of Environment of Quebec, sorry. There's a whole other acronym with it, but Quebec Environment, they had said they were only going to communicate in French, and we had responded in Ganyageha with a courtesy English, and I made sure, because I added it, I made it really small, fine print, to basically say that this is unacceptable in this time. You need to communicate in English, and in Ganyageha.
There are so many issues, and we couldn't even get to them all, because now we're at the point where each candidate's going to get 90 seconds to wrap up and say what they want to the community before we sign off for the evening. So we're going to go in reverse order of the way we started. It was Gus, Cody, then Gina. So Gina, we are going to begin now with you, and your 90 seconds begins now.
Yes, well, I'm running again because, as I've said here tonight, there's a lot of work that I had started and I feel it hasn't been carried on. I'd like to continue carrying on that work because we need to invest more into our community. We need to stand up more for our rights and jurisdiction. A great deal of work has been started and can continue. And that's what I'm here for. I really have the best interest of the community at heart, and I am a worker. I have committed many hours in the past, and then I'm prepared to do it again beyond my normal work hours. So July 6th, if you want somebody who is committed and works a lot, vote Gina Deer.
Okay. You only used half of your time there, so we're going to reset, and Cody, you're up.
So I'm running for Grand Chief because in the last term, and then since I've been here, I've noticed we're failing the community. We're trying our best, but we need to invest in our community. We're expanding. We have to embrace innovation. There are many ideas that I had proposed, different projects, that unfortunately the MCK was not ready for, but the community wanted. But we can't be scared to explore these avenues. We also need to start pushing back on the external governments because, as we stated here today, yes, it's key to be diplomatic, but at some point you have to put your foot down and say enough is enough, and you have to start fighting back. And that's what I'm hoping to do, and I will do. As soon as I get in, there's got to be a change. So if you want a better Ganawage, a more prosperous Ganawage, I'm hoping you can support myself on election day, July 6th. Vote Cody Daibo.
All right, Cody Daibo, you have abdicated some of your time. That's okay. Gasanahawe Skydeer, your time begins now.
Yeah, so Nyauko for allowing me to be the Grand Chief for the last 3 years. It has definitely been a journey. Like I said, I definitely see the potential of our community. Because if you look around our community, we have so much. There's so many brilliant-minded people in Kahnawake. All of the organizations, all of the services that we have, we should be proud of ourselves. I know that there's definitely so much, like I said, more that we could be doing, whether it's politically, whether it's on our spiritual, whether it's on this traditional government journey that we're going to be embarking on together. You're going to need a leader that believes in these things, that believes in our language, our culture, that a lot of the answers of what we've been waiting for is right here for us. And I want to empower people. Like I said, I don't think council can do everything alone. We're 12 people, and I commend the two of you for putting your names forward because we know that this is the way we have to go. Respecting each other, finding ways to work together despite differences of opinions, because that has been long the division of our community. And we're going to be stronger when we're unified to take on the governments, to take on the fights that are coming, because there's definitely a lot coming at us. So I hope you'll continue to support me as the Honda Ia de Nerdizahas on July 6th. Nyaukoa.
And you've used all of your time perfectly. So all I can say is Nyawagoa to all three of you for coming out tonight and making this as interesting as you have for the community. They have a little bit more information on who to vote for when it comes to the Grand Chief on July 6th. You've heard from all the candidates now here on K1037. Candidates night is tomorrow. I know it's another long day and night for the three of you as well tomorrow, because that begins at 6 o'clock over at the Knights of Columbus. So on behalf of Ioriwa, the Eastern Door, and K1037, to all three of you for coming in this evening. You have been listening to the Grand Debate 2024. I want to just give special thanks first to Heather Bowersfeld for answering the phones. Folks, sorry if we couldn't get to all of your questions today. We did the best that we could. There will be more opportunity for you to question the candidates, as I said, of course, tomorrow night. By the way, this was not planned at all with the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake. This was strictly amongst the media for the benefit of the listeners and our readers. There will be a triple byline story with the three of us in both newspapers as well coming out later this week. Big thank you to Luke Dybo and Jared Jacobs helping set this up, to Greg Horn, Delaney Kelly, Steve Bonspiel, Marcus Bancuti, Eve Cable, and Heather answering the phones. Very much appreciated. We'll see you back here 3 years from now for the next Grand Debate in 2027. But first, of course, July 6th, either for Cody Dybo, Gina Deere, or Gasanahawe Sky Deere as Grand Chief. Have a good night, everyone. Nyawago. Ana.
What, quando we're out,